Better Together podcast.
Welcome to the Better Together podcast from the Fuquay-Varina Chamber of Commerce. We are recording today from the Dashmore Conference Room and Studio, sponsored by Rescued Wood Rehab. The Better Together podcast highlights local businesses each week as the Fuquay-Varina Chamber of Commerce continues to promote an amazing business community. I'm Brad Marshall from Greater Culture CrossFit, here in the studio with Marty Woodward from Rescued Wood Rehab.
Well, thank you very much, Brad, and good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be
I feel
here.
like it's been a while.
It has been.
Maybe a whole week. Yeah. So we are joined together and have the honor of having Jeff Whittington joining us here in the studio, and he is the CEO of First Federal Bank. And we are, and First Federal Bank has many branches, and you can speak to that here in a moment. We know of through Jeff Stevens, the board member here with the Chamber of Commerce and former chair. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that relationship of different branches having connections with chambers of commerce, and certainly we appreciate Jeff Stevens for being a part of the Fuquay-Varina Chamber of Commerce and heavily involved. But Jeff, thank you so much for joining us here today, and tell us about what got you into banking. How did that career happen?
And I know the podcast has limited time, so I'll give you very much the Reader's Digest version. I grew up semi-poor. Probably the best way to say it. My parents have passed away, but we didn't have a whole lot. I grew up in South Alabama in Montgomery. When I got out of high school, there was no money for college and things like that. I had worked full-time through high school. And so I actually took a job at a bank so that I would have regular hours, so to speak, so I could put myself through school at night. And I thought banking was really an interesting thing because I saw it as a way that you helped your neighbor, whether it was the guy that was living in the neighborhood beside you, or whether it was business people locally. But once I got into it and realized, okay, this is how you help people. And I never thought of it as being a CEO one day. I think my goal in life was to probably be a branch manager somewhere. No offense to anybody that's a branch manager. It's a great job. But that's what drew me to it. Really was a way to go to school, but also once I got in it and realized what we actually do and how we help people and how we help communities grow, and it just stuck with it. And I've been at this 40 years now.
That's tremendous. 40 years in the banking industry. I'm sure you've seen lots of ups and downs and changes and all those kinds of things. As you think through kind of some of those years, what are some of those challenges that you face in either your current role or some of those prior roles you've had?
Well, some of the things let me say it this way, nothing stays the same. And if you try to stay the same, you're going to get left behind. But nothing stays the same. So you have these moments in a 40-year career where there are good times and then where there are challenges. We came through a credit crisis that everybody remembers back in 08, 9, 10, 11, 12. Lots of banks failed. First Federal did not obviously have that issue. I was not yet there with them. But I spent a lot of time in Georgia buying failed banks with a bank I was with there. That credit crisis caused a lot of angst and caused a lot of people to lose value in their homes, value in their retirements, and it really caused some people who were planning to retire had to work longer, had to do things like that. So you run into credit crisis from time to time, and then we just recently. And I'm not sure everybody really saw the full effect that we saw with the inflationary issues that we ran into, where the Fed increased interest rates tremendously over a very short period of time, and the stress that put on financial institutions, especially small financial institutions like the one that I work with, and it was a real challenge. And it took some real effort and some real leadership, not only from me, but from our board and from all the people that I work with, to really kind of stay the course and see this thing out of that. And we have. but it created some real opportunities.
Yeah, and there's always those things that happen in any business, right, where you have to be kind of ahead of the game to maintain that. Now, you joined First Federal 9 years ago, correct?
I did.
And what are some unique aspects? We talked a little bit about this before we started the podcast. What are some unique things about First Federal that you can share?
I think what I would tell people with First Federal, one is what we were talking about a few moments ago, which is we are a family-owned bank. One family started this bank, three brothers, back in 1959 down in Harnett County. And since that day, it's always been owned by this family, roughly 90% of it. 10%, there are some others that own it, and I have a little piece, I bought in when I got here. But that to me is very unique. In a 60-plus year period of time, there's never been this opportunity to say, hey, let's just sell this thing, take our money, and go home. They don't take a dividend. We don't pay a dividend to our shareholders. Not because we can't, but because that family says, let's take those dollars and let's put them back into the communities that we serve. That is very much not the norm. Most banks, people want to know, what am I going to get out of this when I own the stock? Our stock doesn't necessarily trade on any kind of exchange or anything like that. And so it makes being able to do long-term planning a little bit easier also, because the board is behind, okay, what are we going to take these profits? How are we going to invest them in Fuquay? How are we going to invest them in Community A, Community B, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I love that the bank was founded as a way to build community, continue to reinvest in the community. And part of the Fuquay Chamber here, a lot of small businesses out there, and when they start to think about their banker and products or services or partnering with a bank, that's always an important aspect as you're getting your business either off the ground or continuing forward. So when you think about either products or services or ways that you partner with these small businesses in the community, what are some of the things that stand out to you about First Federal?
We run the full gamut of products. The bank started really as a savings bank, which really means it was there to make loans for people to buy homes. And then over time, and one of the reasons I'm here is over time the bank said, we want to begin to do more commercial banking and move away from just making home loans. And let's expand our horizons a bit. So I come in 2016, and we had dabbled in it a little bit. Since then, we have improved that outreach tremendously. Whether it's products for a customer who says, I've got all these sales, but I have no cash. What's going on? And you look at them and you go, okay, you got a lot of receivables here. Let me help you with your cash flow. Or you've got money tied up in inventory that you're buying for a spring selling season or a fall selling season. Let me help you with that. There's ways that we can do those things. We have electronic banking capacity that a bank our size you wouldn't necessarily think you could do. Whether it's you want to originate your own automated clearinghouse transactions to where you're paying your vendors or you're paying your employees without writing checks. Check fraud has become a tremendous issue. And we try really hard to help our customers move away from writing checks to doing electronic transfers. A lot of folks don't think a bank like First Federal Bank could handle those things. We are closing on probably a loan. We're closing on a loan next week, or either end of this week or next week. It's a project here in Fuquay, $6 million. It's a $6 million project. People wouldn't think some little First Federal Bank you'd have to go to somebody that's a much larger and has banks from California to New York. We help with that. That's not a problem. And so size doesn't bother us. The complexity of electronic banking doesn't bother us. We provide all those services. We are truly a full service bank.
Yeah, and it's great to hear for small businesses as they're trying to navigate and figure out who can be my banking partner to help me achieve the goals and the aspirations I have. there certainly are a variety of options, and you've already highlighted some really cool aspects to First Federal. When you start to think about what maybe sets you apart or makes you different with the relationship that you're building with small business owners, is there anything that comes to mind for you that you get excited about or you're proud of with your bank?
Yeah, here's the thing, and here's what I think sets us apart. Okay, you mentioned Jeff Stevens a moment ago. Jeff Stevens is a very young guy. He goes out and he finds someone who says, I have a need. Jeff Stevens can call and say, hey, I need to come see you, being me. And we sat down with our credit guy and we map out what we can do to help. It's not, that's not going to happen at one of the other banks. And we can tell the customer fairly quickly whether or not we think we can help them. And that doesn't happen everywhere. And so I think the access to being to decision makers and to being able to get them done rather quickly, I think really sets us apart. Whereas you're not going through layers of management, where the story and the person gets lost, and it becomes more about how does this loan, say it's a loan request, fit inside a box, versus I know that business because it's next door to where I get my dry cleaning, or I know I've seen that guy grow that thing from a food truck to this. It's you have real people who know that community making those decisions, not somebody sitting in Atlanta, not somebody sitting in New York, trying to see if it fits a box.
Yeah, I think that idea of access mixed with relationship, really key differentiators there, where it does feel like still a community involved type of bank, which for small business owners is big. You want to be able to pick up the phone, get information quickly, figure out ways to navigate solutions. So that's really, really important. And you mentioned that the bank started being involved in the community, trying to give back. We know Jeff is involved with the board here, and there's a lot of other ways that the bank is continually servicing the community. Are there any either initiatives or events or projects that you get excited about involving Fuquay?
We do a fair amount of, we tend to focus, let me say it this way, we tend to focus on economic development. I'm very much involved in an economic development group, but that's down in Harnett County where the bank was started. Jeff Stevens has been involved with economic development here. We do this. We have a bank in Clayton. We are involved with economic development in the Clayton and Johnston County area. To me, that is where we can do the best good. And because if we can help with economic development, that's going to bring more people here working, living, going to your business, and that rising tide lifts all of us. And so we really tend to do that. We're involved with all the chambers that we focus on. Obviously, Jeff's been very much involved. I go back all the way to my days in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, when I was the treasurer for the Chamber of Commerce of West Alabama. And I've seen the how the sausage gets made, so to speak. But we're very much involved in all our chambers. The other piece that we are involved in is healthcare, and we're very much involved in trying to promote sound healthcare in some of the more rural areas that we operate. That's not necessarily the case. Fuquay is blessed with proximity to healthcare. Not everybody has that access. And so that's important to us. And then ultimately the schools. So I think if you can have strong economic development, good health care, and a sound school system, you've got the three legs of the stool that make this thing work.
That's fantastic, Jeff. So, over the years in your experience in banking, are there some key lessons that you've learned?
Yeah. Can't say those on the podcast, but there's some things that I was taught in school that stuck with me. Very little of it stuck with me, but some of it did. And that truly is to sort of stick to what you know. we have customers from time to time who will come in and want to know and want us to be involved with things like cryptocurrency. I know about that much in my little finger about cryptocurrency. You guys probably know everything about it. I don't. I'm not going to get us involved in things like that, and I'm sure the customer knows exactly what they want to do, but I don't know enough about it. So there was an old saying that they taught us, this called "stick to your knitting," and it's probably nobody else has ever heard that, but it's stick to what you know. And so we know how to do the fundamental things that help a business grow, help a homeowner. But when you get into some of these more exotic things or things that I think are a little less tried and true, we're not going to go there. We'll point you to somebody maybe that we know, but we're just not going to get involved in it.
Excellent. So, is there any key advice that you would offer to someone who is an entrepreneur, wants to become an entrepreneur? Is there any key advice that you would, advise somebody on?
Yeah, I was somebody asked me that earlier, and one of the things I would tell people is always when you're looking to start a business or you're looking at running a business, anybody can figure out what's going to happen when the first drop hits the water in the bucket. The real key is trying to look 3 or 4 ripples out and be prepared for that, because the unexpected is going to happen. None of us expected interest rates to go up 500 basis points in 18 months. We talked about it, but we said it's unrealistic. Well, guess what? It happened. And so I would say be prepared for the unexpected and always be trying to look just over the horizon and consider things 3 or 4 ripples out, not just how good things are right now. And I know that sounds a little bit Debbie Downer maybe, but be prepared, because the 08s are going to happen. Inflation is going to take place, and you want to be able to weather those things.
Yeah, I think being prepared as a business owner, I know that's a key thing, and understanding that, hey, it might be really good right now, or it might be really bad right now, but you've got to be able to weather that storm and be prepared for that.
That's right.
So, do you have any? Does the bank have any future goals or upcoming projects that you're excited about? You might want to share with us.
There are things we're working on right now. We're not ready yet to announce. But we will. I think the biggest thing I would tell you is right now we're going to continue to invest in Fuquay. They laugh at me. I really wanted to put a branch where McWally's is now. I just think it's the best corner in Fuquay, and it was just too much. It needed a McWally's. It didn't need a First Federal.
Well, maybe you could put a branch inside
That's
McWally's.
right.
Yeah, I think there's a little corner next to the bar and the bowling. Yeah.
But we're going to continue to invest in Fuquay. We're making investments in many of our other branches, and again, we operate 6 branches in 6 different locations, 6 different towns. So you have to sort of spread it out and address them as you can. Fuquay has been great for us, and we have doubled our size. Jeff Stevens takes full credit for that.
Of course he did. Yes.
So, but we've doubled our size here. And so we've got some ideas of some expansions that we'd like to make, and some things. In fact, I'm meeting some people here at 3:30 this afternoon to have that discussion.
Wow, that's very exciting. And having been here now for the last 9 years, getting acclimated to the area, I imagine there's some favorite spots that you like to frequent or take in. Are there any of those that you'd like to share, that some of those places you've come to really appreciate?
We like, we were there last Friday night. We really like Vicious Fishes. If we're just sitting around and we go, okay, let's call. My wife does this more than I do. She'll put out in a group text to some friends of ours, and she'll say, all right, who's up for dinner tonight? And then it seems like, I would say, more than half the time we wind up at Vicious Fishes. And it's just a good spot. We sat out on the patio last weekend, had some refreshments and had a nice dinner, and it was just a nice place.
I love that. And when you start to think about your career and the amount of time you spent in banking, I know there's probably a lot of great advice. You've already shared some of that with us, but as you've navigated your career, is there anything that sort of guided or helped you make some of those decisions on when to transition from one role to another, or how to go about navigating your career?
I think that this goes back to my South Alabama roots and, being in the Bible Belt. You got to pray about it. And those, if the door is supposed to open, it will open. And but I would tell you too, the thing I've learned in life is not to try to be greedy. Not everything is about money. And some of the changes or some of the jobs I've taken weren't always the most lucrative, but they seemed like they fit, and they fit in where my career was at the time, and it would help me progress my career. And that ultimately, the compensation comes, but that really do things that will build your experience level and build your, not resume, but acumen, so that you can do the job. Sometimes experience and ability to do the job aren't always the same.
Yeah. I think that's great advice for folks as they navigate their journey, because I think through of how people can communicate the why behind why they might want to invest in a job or a career and what that looks like. And it's not always about the money. Sometimes there's that satisfaction and the ability to help people and what that looks like. So I love that advice there. One more for you then is, when you start to think about First Federal and you've come to know the company for the last 9 years, any surprising facts that maybe either caught you off guard or maybe surprise other people when they hear it or think about your particular bank?
Again, I think the thing that surprises people, not necessarily me, but surprises people when they learn about our bank, is they will pigeonhole a company like ours. And it's small. So that means they're limited in what they can do. And then they find out that several of us came from much larger organizations and have been exposed to much more than they would anticipate. And we have the experience, we have the acumen, and we have the capacity to do a lot of things. And so again, I go back to this project that's going to close next week. It's a $6 million project. Well, most folks wouldn't have expected that from us. It's a $6 million commercial project. So it's I would say that's the thing we surprise people with. I'm not surprised by our folks or what we can do. We just have to have the opportunity to get in front of them and show them.
So, Jeff, if someone wants to engage with First Federal and learn more about it, or get in contact with you, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Here in Fuquay Varina, I would tell you, one, we're over on Judd Parkway. I think it's actually 603 North Judd, right there at Main Street. And so the location is there. You can always go to our website, which is ffbnc.com. That is one of the things I'm most proud of. When I got here, it was First Federal Bank NC, or maybe even First Federal Bank North Carolina.com.
All spelled out?
All spelled out.
Oh, wow.
And your email address. So my email address was jwhittington at First Federal Bank North Carolina. It wouldn't fit. So if nothing else, my legacy is going to be that I was able to shorten our website from First Federal Bank North to ffbnc.com.
The acronym, is a little easier. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
But those are the two ways. And I would say, the Fuquay office, Jeff Stevens, Todd McIntyre, Kathy Santoli over there, all of them are great folks.
Yeah, great folks, and they are all heavily engaged with the Chamber of Commerce. And we talked a little bit about this. What's your favorite part about being involved with not only the Fuquay Arena Chamber of Commerce, but other Chamber of Commerces that you engage with? What's your favorite part about being a part of a Chamber of Commerce?
It's honestly, my time, at least I think my time in front of the crowd should be moving away. And where I get most excited is when I see people like a Jeff Stevens being able to step into a role like that and help them do that. The other thing I think is important is when we can look back and we can look at a chamber or we can look at any organization and realize that we've left our thumbprint on it somehow, and that we helped that chamber do this, and now the community's benefiting from it. And it's not always that you got to stand in front and be in the spotlight. I tell our folks all the time, when the spotlight comes on, you're going to find I'm going to ease off to the side because I want Jeff, I want Todd, I want Kathy to be standing there. I was not able to come to a business after hours not long ago, and Jeff said, we need you to say a few words. And I said, I'm out of town. And it was perfect because they always, they default to, hey, we want you to say something. No, I want you. I want them to. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that make this thing work. They're the guys and ladies that make it work with this chamber. And they're the ones that have got to be connected. It really doesn't matter about me. It's really about them now.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and not only involving with the chamber, but leading from behind and letting your folks take the lead on that. That's fantastic. So this has been tremendous, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us on the Better Together podcast. Jeff Whittington with First Federal Bank, and that is FFBNC.com, right?
That's
all
right.
Right, fantastic. Much easier than saying it all out.
That's right.
CEO Jeff Whittington, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having it.
And thank you, folks, for being part of the Better Together podcast.
Yeah, join us each week on the Better Together podcast from the Fuquay Arena Chamber of Commerce as we continue to highlight great local businesses from the Dashmore Conference Room and Studio, sponsored by Rescued Wood Rehab. I am Brad.
And I am Marty.
And we are
Better Together.
We're better together. It's a weekly podcast. We're better together. You should know that there's more in the dash. We're better together. Fuquay Arena Chamber of Commerce. We're better together podcast.